Welcome everyone. Glad to see you on my channel. Today I will tell you about an unusual story, an amazing story about companionship and love. I wish you a pleasant audience. Cian was in a hurry to get home. The business trip had dragged on. He was supposed to leave for 3 days and was away for a whole week. But there wasn't much time left. Just a couple more hours and he would meet his beloved wife. It would be nice to get there early before Allison left for work. Then he wouldn't have to wait another day to spend time together. Cian and Allison had been married for 5 years. They were soulmates. They hardly ever fought. They loved spending time together and tried not to be apart for long. They only had one reason to be sad. They couldn't have a baby yet, but they were still young, healthy, and hoped that soon they would experience this happiness. Cian suddenly hit the brakes sharply. He was thinking so much that only at the last moment he noticed the car jumping out in front of him. Fortunately, he was able to brake in time, and there was no collision. Cian jumped out of the car and rushed to the second car. There was a girl behind the wheel looking completely dumbfounded. "How are you?" he asked. "I'm not hurt." "I'm sorry, please. I'm sorry," the girl begged. "I'm so sorry for you. I've been thinking. I'm just having problems at home. With my husband, we're getting a divorce," she cried. "Listen, girl. I understand you're upset. I'm glad it's all over now. Let's drive together to the nearest gas station or cafe, and there you stop and call your husband." The girl cried even harder. "I'm sure if you talk, everything will be all right." "It won't." She shook her head. "Everything will never be all right. He cheated on me." "Look, girl, what's your name?" "Shanna," she sobbed. "Shanna, we can't just stand in the middle of the road like this. And I can't let you go alone like this. So wipe your tears. There's a cafe about 1 kilometer away. You're following me. Take your time and please watch the road." The girl nodded her head in agreement. Cian returned to the car. He was sorry for the situation. Most likely he wouldn't be able to catch Allison at home. But he couldn't leave this girl like this. They stopped at a cafe and Cian got out of the car again. "Would you like some coffee?" he asked. The girl shook her head nakedly. "I don't want any. I don't want anything," she cried. "Come on." Cian literally, forcibly dragged her out of the car. "So, Shanna, do you have anyone you can call to come get you?" "I don't know, relatives, parents." "Yes," she said. "Okay, we'll have coffee and wait for someone to come get you." Cian led the girl into the cafe. "And there's no need to be so upset," he asked her. "Maybe things will still change. For example, I believe in true love. And if your husband is your soulmate, then you will definitely reconcile. And if not, you'll soon meet your true destiny." "You're so amazing," the girl said. "I've never met a man who was so open about his feelings. Are you married? And you must be very happy?" "That's right. My wife and I are very much in love. And I believe that everyone should have the kind of love that I have. Shanna, you're gonna be very happy. I'm sure of it." "Well, I'm not." Shanna smiled sadly. "You know, thank you so much for stopping and talking to me. I feel better now. I'll wait for my parents and we'll go home together. I don't think my husband and I are gonna make it. It's been bad for a long time. But thanks to you, I believe that happiness is still possible for me. Not right now, later. But there is still a chance. You will be happy," Cian assured her. "You go, they're waiting for you. Your wife must be worried. Go, I'll really be all right." "Good luck, Shanna." Cian said goodbye to the girl and drove home. Now he could take his time. Allison had already left for work. They wouldn't see each other until the evening. Cian pulled up to the house, took his bag out of the car, and went up to his floor. He took his keys out of his pocket and tried to put them in the keyhole. But the key didn't fit the lock. At first, Cian thought he was imagining things. But no, the keyhole was completely different. He had a long-stemmed key in his hands, and the keyhole was suitable for a flat key. Sean looked around carefully. The floor was his and the apartment was his. They had lived here since their first day together. Sean couldn't be confused, so his wife changed the locks. But why? And why didn't she say anything? Sean shrugged. Maybe she'd just forgotten to tell him. He dialed Allison's number. She didn't answer for a long time. He was starting to worry. Yes, he finally heard his wife's cold voice. "Allison, honey, hi. It's me. I'm here. I can't get home. Did you change the locks?" "Well, if you can't open the door, I changed it," the wife replied curtly. "Your 2 suitcases are at the neighbor's, Barbara. That should be enough for now. That should be enough for now. Then I'll pack the rest and call you and let you know when you can pick them up." "Allison, I don't understand. What stuff? What am I supposed to pick up?" he asked again. "My stuff, my computer, clothes." What's not to understand? The girl clarified. "I don't understand why I have to take my things. Where am I supposed to live? I don't know. I'm sure you'll think of something. Your imagination is good. You have a lot of friends in the city. Don't worry. I know we share an apartment, and I can't just dispose of it like that." "Yes, you can, but legally it's your apartment." "Wait, what does the apartment have to do with it?" "Do whatever you want with it." "I don't care. Why can't we live together? Why did you pack my stuff? Did I do something to offend you?" "Yeah, I got held up on a business trip, but I warned you, and I don't think that's a reason to kick me out of the house." "It's not," Allison agreed. "It's a different reason." "Did you have someone else?" Sean asked. "Have you fallen out of love with me? Do you want to get a divorce so you can get married again?" "I have no one," the girl replied. "You're the one who cheated on me. I didn't lie to you. I don't want to talk anymore. And don't want to talk anymore. And don't pretend you don't know what's wrong. Don't call me anymore if you need anything. Write to me. I'll give you everything." "Allison, wait. Let's meet in person." "No," the girl said firmly. "I don't want to. I'm done. I've talked enough in 5 years." And Allison hung up the phone. Sean stood by the door of his own apartment, confused and unable to get in. He slammed his fist against the wall with anger. What's going on? Why is Allison acting like this? Sean sighed. There was no choice. Got to get his stuff, find an apartment. After all, he had to go to work tomorrow. He'd deal with Allison later, but naturally, whatever Sean did during the day, he thought of his wife, remembering her every word, looking for clues. Allison said he'd cheated on her. Sean even thought she'd somehow found out about his conversation with the girl at the roadside cafe, but he still didn't see what the big deal was. So he'd talked to the girl, helped her, sympathized. Allison herself was always ready to help. She would never condemn Sean for such a deed. And how could she know? Then the man remembered about his wife's friends. One was divorced, the other seemed to be married, and even, according to Allison, was happy. But she didn't like Sean. If either of them had seen him with Shanna then. But no, that would be silly too. How do you change a lock in 40 minutes? Sean shook his head. No nonsense. Allison had obviously changed the lock before. But what could have happened? In their entire life together, they'd only had one serious fight when Sean's first love had suddenly found him on social media and started texting him persistently. Sean had the indiscretion not only to admit it to Allison, but also to show the correspondence. At the time, he thought the whole thing was funny, but Allison scolded him severely. She said that the girl might have serious feelings for him that she was hiding. Allison told him to write the girl the truth, to admit that he was married. When she didn't stop writing even after that, Sean blocked the girl. These events took place a couple years ago, and since then, in their relationship with Allison reigned full openness and mutual trust. At least that's what Sean had thought until today. Sean had been living in a rented apartment for 2 days now. Today he decided to meet one of his wife's best friends. The girl refused to answer his questions, and now she didn't answer the phone at all. So he went to see Anna after work. "What's going on with my wife?" he asked, approaching the girl. Anna jumped with surprise. "Your wife? Did something happen to Allison?" She wondered. "There's no need to make a circus of it," Cian said indignantly. "I know you know. Why did she kick me out of the house?" "What?" Anna's face was so shocked that Cian believed that the girl knew nothing about it. He sighed tiredly. "When was the last time you spoke to her?" "A week ago," Anna answered. "Everything was fine then." "Wait, how could she kick you out? Why did you leave? And why didn't you even ask why?" "She changed the locks while I was on a business trip. She won't answer my questions. Of course, I'm going to go over there and try to talk to her. But I thought I'd give her some time and figure out what's going on first. That's why I came to see you." "Anna, for God's sake, if you know something, don't say anything. Does Allison have someone?" "Yesterday, I would have said no," Anna said. "But now, she's throwing up her hands. I don't know what to tell you. Wait, I'll call Amanda. Amanda can't stand me. She won't help me. Wait. Let's find out if she's aware of the situation or not." The girl called Amanda. She didn't know anything about the latest developments either, but she was excited. Cian heard her tell Sveta. She finally came to her senses and dumped that idiot. Maybe she'll be happy now. When Anna finished talking, Cian looked at the girl. "Will you go to her today?" he asked. "We will, of course," Anna answered. "If you find out anything, will you tell me?" "I don't think so," she admitted honestly. "Allison is our friend. I'll protect her. If I think she needs your help, I'll call you. And if not, then I'm sorry." Cian didn't expect much more than that, because the main thing he'd learned from today's meeting was that his wife hadn't kicked him out of the apartment at the instigation of her friends. So there was another reason. The next day, Cian decided it was time to talk to Allison directly. He left work early and drove to his and Allison's house. He parked the car far away so as not to spook his wife and waited. Soon he saw her car pull into the yard, and another one right behind it. Cian watched as his wife parked in her usual spot, and the second car parked in the spot where he usually parked. Cian didn't know why he didn't get out of his car and walk towards his wife. Some unknown force was keeping him inside. He saw Allison. She took her purse, closed her car, and suddenly smiled broadly at the man who had arrived in the second car. They struck up a conversation. He took the purse and the bag of groceries from Allison's hands and they walked toward the driveway. Cian was just taken aback. Before this, he'd been looking for reasons in himself. He thought he'd made a mistake or hurt his wife, or there were no other reasons. But it all turned out so banal and simple. His wife has a lover. His favorite, gentle, honest Allison deceives him, and by the looks of it, she's been cheating on him for a long time. Cian angrily started the car and drove out of the yard. She wants a divorce. Fine, he'll give her a divorce. But he's not going to play the noble knight anymore. If she's found someone better, he's going to have to provide for her. Cian wasn't going to leave his unfaithful wife half his apartment. He'd insist on a property settlement. Cian drove around town for a long time, trying to calm down. He didn't get back to his apartment until late that night. He felt sick to his stomach. For the first time in years, he felt like there was no place for him in this town. Allison was his whole world, his universe, and he couldn't imagine how she could do that to him. The next morning, Cian regained his composure, calmed down, and began to think more rationally. Even assuming that his wife had another man, why was Allison hiding him? She's a rational girl, and changing the locks and not answering her husband's calls isn't the answer to the problem. Cian realized he needed to look into this in more detail. While he still didn't know the reason for what was going on, he needed to talk to his wife. Cian decided to send her a message. Allison, I respect your privacy, but I need an explanation. Either you will take my call, or I'll be waiting for you outside our apartment. You can't avoid me forever. Allison almost immediately called him herself. What else do you want from me? The wife asked. I want to understand what's going on. Cian, I've told you several times that I don't want to discuss anything with you, and I'm not going to explain anything. But you kick me out of the house, you refuse to talk to me, and you won't tell me why. Don't you think I deserve some kind of explanation? We've been married for 5 years, and all that time you've been lying to me, the girl replied, and lied so sincerely that I never even suspected that you are dishonest with me. And now I don't want to listen to you, because I'm afraid to believe you again. Allison, I don't know who told you what, but maybe it's not me. Maybe it's not me. Maybe it's them. I don't think so. I've checked everything. I have proof. Proof of what? Sean demanded. You wrote that you wanted to tell me something. Allison changed the subject. Tell me, because I'm not going to continue discussing our relationship. I saw you with a man last night, and he's the reason you broke up with me. Me with a man? Allison was surprised. What man? Have you forgotten already? Cian's voice was full of sarcasm. In the courtyard, and he stayed in your apartment for quite a while. I never waited for him to come out of the driveway. Don't tell me that's our new neighbor. No, said the girl. It's not a neighbor, it's a realtor. A realtor. Cian was surprised. Why do you need a realtor? First of all, the apartment is too big for me alone. And secondly, it's our joint apartment, and I thought it's not fair that I live there and you have to rent. We'll split the money. And when the time comes to divorce, we'll decide what to do with it. By the way, I haven't filed for divorce yet, but I think I'll do it soon. I hope you won't be an obstacle. I'll sell the apartment and split the money. Or you can buy out my half. Or we could split it. Well, I'll take any of those options. Allison. Oh yes, his wife interrupted. I wasn't thinking. I've decided to rent it out, but do you want to live there? I can move out the day after tomorrow. I just don't understand why you're in such a hurry. Stop, Sean, please stop. Are you hurting me on purpose? I don't understand. Do you really not care about your past, about the things you kept from me over the years? You think that's okay? What past? Why don't you explain? I put all our stuff in the garage. They're in boxes. There's dishes and clothes. The boxes are labeled. You have the keys to the garage. In a perfectly even voice, Allison began to list. Everything I need, I took. If you need plates or pots and pans, you can have any box you want. Photos, your notes, and other papers are in a separate box, too. It's mostly stuff that belongs to you. So get that box out of the garage, or you'll never know. That's it. Bye, Allison. But the girl had already hung up. Cian threw the phone on the table. What the hell is going on? What had he been hiding for 5 years? His family? Yes, he had, but why talk about them? He tried not to think about them, and certainly didn't want to tie his new happy life with memories of them. Okay, he needed to call his friends, find out what was going on with his family and loved ones. Figure out what they'd said to Allison, and most importantly, why. And give his wife a few more days to come to her senses. And then she wouldn't get away from him. They'd have a serious talk. Cian contacted his best friend from high school. Thomas was very surprised. They hadn't spoken in years. Something serious had happened, Thomas grinned. You wouldn't just call. You've cut your whole family out of your life, and with them all of us. Cian nodded. His friend was completely right. What is, he agreed. I'm sorry, when I left, I was really angry, both at my parents and at the circumstances. I didn't want anything to do with the past. And then somehow, I see, Thomas replied. What happened now? I don't know how to explain it. Anyway, I think that someone from my family has started to interfere in my life again. You wouldn't happen to know anything about them, would you? No, I saw your parents about 1.5 years ago. Same old, same old. They live in the same place. We were walking together from somewhere. I said hello, asked how they were doing, and that's it. They didn't tell me anything about you or ask me anything. They said your brother was doing well. He settled down. He's getting married. Why do you think they're meddling in your life? Cian sighed. My wife and I are having problems. She won't talk to me. Kicked me out of the house, says it's because of my past. And I'm at a loss as to why. But your parents might have intimidated you and said some unpleasant things, Thomas guessed. They have a way of being threatening. On the other hand, they can be very polite and sweet. You think because they won't talk, it's their doing? Kind of. Okay, I'm going to try talking to Allison again. If that doesn't work, then I'll call my parents. I didn't even know you were married, Thomas muttered. How long has it been? 5 years. You haven't gotten married? I've been married and divorced. We were married for 2 years, but it didn't work out. And now, I'm still single. I work. Nothing good. Listen, why do your parents want your wife? You've been married long enough. They haven't cared about her all these years. Why now? If I knew, Cian stretched out. So maybe it had nothing to do with your family? Allison said I've been lying to her since day one, and I've never lied to her. The only thing I've never told her is the reasons why I'm not in touch with my family. Thomas was quiet for a moment. Okay, I tell you. Call me, he said. But I don't think you and I have anything to talk about. Too much water has passed. Cian didn't argue. He said goodbye and hung up. For a while he thought about calling his parents, but then he decided it was better to talk to his wife first. The next day after work, the man drove to his house. He was ready for any development. If necessary, he would convince Allison to let him in and listen. And if that didn't work, he would just break down the door. But tonight he and his wife would definitely talk. He went up to his floor and rang the bell. To his great surprise, the door opened instantly. Cian expected that his wife would avoid the conversation, but Cian was even more surprised when behind the door was a complete stranger. Who are you? Cian asked. What are you doing here? I live here, the woman replied. We are renting an apartment. We moved in today. Everything is legal. We have a contract. Yeah, Cian nodded, confused. I don't mind. I'm sorry, have you and Allison been in contact? Oh, yes, the woman confirmed. Do you know her? I do, Cian nodded. I've been looking for her. Do you know where she lives now? No, I have no idea. She just said she was leaving town. That's it. She said she'd call, and that I could send money to her card. I'm sorry. She waved her hands. I didn't know anyone was coming to see her either. If she calls, can I give her a message? No, thank you. Nothing, Cian said. Allison didn't answer her phone. Cian realized his wife had decided to just run away. Now he was getting really worried. This wasn't like her at all. Allison was never impulsive. She usually weighed her actions carefully. And most importantly, the girl never avoided talking. That's why Cian thought his wife's actions were not only strange, but also very disturbing. A few days he still tried to call her, and then he took a vacation and went to the only place where he thought Allison could be, the town where she'd grown up. Allison, unlike him, never hid her past. She was eager to share her childhood memory. And despite the fact that her parents were now living abroad with their eldest son's family, Cian and Allison had traveled several times to the place where Allison had spent her childhood. Cian knew only one friend who lived there, so he went straight to her. I haven't seen Allison in 3 years, she said, since the two of you went on vacation, and I haven't spoken to her in weeks. What's going on with you two? I wish I knew, Cian replied. Look, Catherine, help me out here. I know you're on your friend's side, but I don't even know what this is about. I need to figure out what I did wrong. I didn't cheat on her. I didn't lie to her. It was nothing like that. Tell me, is there anyone else she can stay with here? Or maybe she has another phone number. I don't know another phone number, Catherine answered. And there's no place for her to stay. That's for sure. No, she has no one else here. So the girl waved her hands. I cannot help you. But even if I did, I wouldn't help you. Allison doesn't just take offense. You must have really hurt her. Cian sighed tiredly. There was no point in changing Catherine's mind. He saw that his wife's friend was telling the truth and really had no idea where Allison was. There was no point in going home either. The apartment was rented out. Allison might be in town, but definitely not at her friend's, and where to find her Cian had no idea. Also, he's on vacation. The man sighed. It seemed if he wanted his wife back, or at least to understand what was going on, he only had one option. Time to go home and face his past. Cian was under no illusions. He knew that meeting his parents would be difficult. They are offended by him. He himself has no desire to communicate with them. But the man did not even think about living in his parents' apartment. He rented himself a hotel and spent almost the entire first day in the room. He had no idea that meeting his family would be so hard. Already in the evening, Cian entered a familiar courtyard. He went up to the second floor of an old 5-story building and rang the doorbell. His father opened the door. A former officer, he had always prided himself on his ability to keep a straight face in any situation. But now, Cian, even with a kind of pity, noted the unconcealed surprise on his father's face. Plus, it was impossible not to notice how much he'd aged. "What are you doing here?" Alex asked. "And I'm glad to see you, Dad," Cian grinned back. "Did you and your mother think I wouldn't come? That I'd let you guys just barge into my life like this?" Fiona looked out into the hallway. "Who is it, Sasha?" she asked her husband. "Cian's here." "Cian? Cian who?" the woman asked. "Your eldest son," Cian grinned. "The one you'd rather forget about. What are you doing here?" the woman asked in surprise. "You said you wanted nothing to do with us, and that you weren't going to help us, even if we crawled to you on our knees and begged for help." Cian nodded. He was ashamed of those words, but he really meant it. His mother wasn't exaggerating. "Why don't you let us into the apartment?" he asked. "Don't worry, I won't be long. We'll talk and then I'll leave." Alex shrugged his shoulders. "We didn't kick you out of the house," he reminded. "You left on your own." "Yeah," Cian agreed. "I left on my own, and you did everything you could to make me want to. But that doesn't matter now. I assume you need some kind of help from me, since you've decided to get to me through Allison. Let's not get all comedic and pretend like you have no idea what we're talking about. Just tell me what you need. I'll take care of it." "Who's Allison?" Fiona asked. "Allison is my wife. There's no need to pretend you don't know that." Alex looked at his son. "Apparently we should congratulate you on your wedding. How long have you been married?" "A long time," replied Cian. "Okay," waved his father's hand. "Come on in. We'll talk. I understand you're having problems with your wife, and you think it's our fault." Cian nodded. "That's exactly what it is," he confirmed. "You did it with some kind of intent. You probably need help. I'll help you. Just tell me what you told Allison." "We didn't say anything," Dad said, "and we didn't even know you were married. I know it's hard for you to believe, but not all the trouble in your life is our fault. You're used to blaming us. My wife told me that I've been lying to her since the day we met, that I was hiding something from her." "What could I be hiding besides you?" Cian asked. "You should ask her more," Fiona suggested. "She's gone, and I can't find her." The father grinned. "What?" he asked. "Turns out you're not perfect at everything either. Turns out you're not perfect at anything." Cian ran his hand over his face tiredly. "We haven't talked in years, and I still can't figure out what's wrong with me. Well, what's wrong with you? I'm your son, and judging by how much I look like both of you, I'm native, not adopted. So why do you dislike me so much? I've never been good enough for you, for our family." Fiona got up from her chair and walked over to the window. "We love you, and always have. Except it wasn't enough for you. You were always demanding attention. You kept pestering us with your talk about how Edgar should be raised. Cian didn't disagree. They've had this conversation 1,000 times. So you didn't talk to my wife? He asked again. No, we haven't, his mother replied firmly. We've known for a long time that in case of trouble you are useless to count on. And to tell the truth, we have nothing to help us now. All right, Cian nodded. I trust you. And Edgar? Where is he? He could have written to my wife. No, Alex replied. It's not him. We know that for a fact. I wonder why I should believe you. You shouldn't, replied his father sharply. You've never taken our word for it. But your brother's been in prison for almost 2 years. He just hasn't been able to write or call anyone. Edgar's in jail? Cian was very surprised. And you couldn't get him off? His father looked away. I couldn't, he admitted muffledly. They were picked up right at the scene of the crime. Another theft? Cian guessed. How long is he in jail for? Longer, Fiona replied. And this time it wasn't just theft. The woman was almost crying, but bodily harm. But it wasn't his fault. He was framed. He didn't hit that man. It's never his fault, Cian said mockingly. Well, I'll be off then. Thank you for the team, for the conversation, and most importantly for stopping meddling in my personal life. It's what you wanted, Fiona said. I still do, Cian countered. After you offered to do time for your beloved Edgar, I'd rather not have anything to do with you. We meant well, Dad replied. If Edgar hadn't gone to jail the first time, he'd be a completely different man now, I'm sure of it. And who I would be is of no concern to you at all, Cian concluded. You're stronger than Edgar, Alex said. You would have been able to handle all the hardships of prison, and I still think you should have gone in his place. It would have shown that you loved your brother and that you cared about us. Cian was very angry with himself. Why had he gone to his parents? What had he hoped to hear? That they were remorseful, that they loved him as much as Edgar, that they'd suddenly have a conscience and everything would change. Everything he'd learned from them, they could have discussed over the phone. There was no need to come here. He had decided to leave and break off all relations with his family for a reason. Now he was just convinced for the 100th time that it was the right decision. What to do next, Cian didn't know. Here, he had not found out anything. Where to look for his wife also had no idea. He had lost his spirit. He'd thought Allison was his soulmate. He'd thought they were inseparable. But it was so shaky that a few words from a stranger were enough to make it all fall apart. But still, who could have talked to Allison? Sam dialed his wife's number out of habit and wasn't surprised when the phone was disconnected. He stopped in front of the hotel and thought, should he leave tonight? Or spend the night here and come home tomorrow? He decided he shouldn't go at night. Cian climbed the stairs, went inside, and went to the elevator. He suddenly thought he saw Allison. Cian shook his head and smiled sadly. It's about time. He was starting to see her everywhere. He looked again. Suddenly he realized he hadn't imagined it. It was really Allison. But how? How? Why? What was she doing here? Cian followed his wife. But when he turned into the corridor where Allison had disappeared earlier, there was no one there. Cian scrutinized the long corridor, but it was impossible to guess behind which of the many doors his wife was hiding. The man hurried to the reception. Young lady? Hello? He addressed the receptionist. Sorry, we do not give such information, replied the girl. But if you want, we can give you a note or a gift. Thank you, but that's not necessary. But you can at least say whether there is such a guest in your hotel or not. I can't either, she smiled. I have no right. Cian went back to his room. As unbelievable as the encounter seemed, Cian knew for sure it was Allison. The most important thing was that she didn't move out of here tonight. But she didn't seem to notice him, so she's in no hurry. He'll get up early tomorrow and watch her in the hotel lobby. He's got no other option. He finally got lucky this morning. He hadn't been in the lobby 20 minutes when he saw Allison. She was obviously in a hurry. "It's good to see you at last," Cian said as he stood in front of her. The girl flinched in surprise and froze. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "I never thought I'd see you here." "Likewise," Cian replied. "Why don't you explain? What brings you here? It's my family, isn't it? They must have said something to you." "And yesterday I almost believed they had nothing to do with it." "Depends on who you mean," Allison said. "If you're talking about your parents, who you've been hiding from me for years for reasons I don't understand, then no, they haven't contacted me, and I don't know them." "Then who has contacted you? My brother?" "You have a brother." Allison was surprised in turn. "Cian, what do you want? We've been married for 5 years, known each other for even longer, and I'm just now finding out you have a brother. Your life before you met me was a complete mystery to me. And how can you really know a person if you don't know their history?" "There's nothing to know," Sean replied. "Allison, I'm not hiding anything from you. Sure, I've asked you 1,000 times to tell me about your family, and you've always changed the subject. That's because I'm ashamed. Ashamed of my parents. I'm ashamed of a lot of things I've done. I don't want to remember my past. Yesterday I saw my parents for the first time in years, and you know what I realized? I wish we hadn't met them." Allison only looked at her husband in silence. "If it's so important to you, I'll tell you," he surrendered. "I'll tell you every detail. Just tell me what's going on between us." "I have to go," Allison replied. "I'm in a hurry. Let's talk later." "Oh no, I've heard that before. You refused to talk at first, and then you just disappeared. What was that all about? And why are you in such a hurry to rent our apartment?" "If you're in a hurry, I'll go with you." The girl sighed. "I'll give you my word of honor that I'll be back in a couple of hours. We'll sit down and talk about everything, especially since I need your help. I hope you won't say no. And some help." "Unbelievable. Help with what?" "Maybe," Allison said. "And there's no need to yell at me. After all, I'm here to fix your mistakes." "My mistakes?" he interjected. "What mistakes?" "I'll be back," Allison replied, "and we'll talk about it." Cian nodded sullenly. He suddenly felt a great fatigue come over him. He didn't care. It wasn't how he'd imagined meeting his beloved wife, and he'd never thought Allison would be so distrustful of him. The words of a stranger had changed their lives instantly. Besides, what could they possibly have told her? Didn't like her brother. Didn't go along with her parents. What did he do? It's obvious Allison doesn't love him. So it doesn't make sense. She's made it clear she wants a quickie divorce, so he'd give her a divorce. Cian was pretty sure his wife was gonna run away again, but a few hours later, she called and invited him to her room. "I think it's better to talk here," Allison remarked. "There are too many people in the cafe." "I don't care," Cian replied. "The important thing is that you explain to me why all this is happening. I'll answer all your questions and explain everything, but..." The girl lowered her eyes. "From what I see after I tell you everything, we'll have a big fight. And I'm afraid my questions will remain unanswered." "That's okay," Cian shrugged. "I live with unanswered questions." Cian Allison looked at her husband softly. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have left like that. I just wanted to see everything with my own eyes, and I really need to know as much as I can about your past." "Okay," Cian sank into a chair. "What do you want to know?" "Everything," Allison answered immediately. "I was born into a military family and a teacher." Cian began his story. "When I was very young, my parents moved around a lot. But by the time I went to school, we had settled here. Mom's a history teacher. Has a weakness for pretty names and various historical figures. Besides, her name's Fiona, and she's decided her children's names should start with that letter. In general, we lived as an ordinary family, as it seemed to me. My friend's parents were strict, and I got a lot of abuse from my parents. I thought it was just the way things were. Many of my friends had older siblings, and when my parents informed me that there would soon be a second child in the family, I was excited. But Edgar's birth changed everything. I wasn't remembered very often. And now, I wasn't remembered very often. And now, I wasn't needed at all. You'll say, it's childish jealousy. Believe me, it's not. In high school and college, I tried my best to do something my parents would be proud of. But it was like I didn't even exist. The only time they remembered me was when they had to get Edgar out of a jam. Believe me, I'm not proud of my behavior during those years. I should have been smarter, wiser. Just stepped aside and let them live their lives. But my parents were great at manipulating me. They would pull me closer and then push me away again. Eventually, Edgar started stealing. He was unlucky enough to get caught on a regular basis. As long as the thefts were small, Dad was able to get him off. But then he got arrested for grand larceny, and Dad was powerless. So my parents suggested that I take the blame and do time for my brother. Allison looked at her husband with wide open eyes. I think I'm beginning to understand you, she whispered. And then, what happened? Nothing. I packed up and left. I didn't talk to my parents anymore, and I'm here now because I thought they were the reason for your strange behavior. No, it wasn't them, Allison shrugged. So are you going to explain to me what's going on and why you came here? Cian, I understand that you don't have the best relationship with your parents. I can even understand your hesitation about having kids or not. I can kind of understand why you left your kids. But do you really think your cheating is okay? What cheating? Asked a shocked Cian. What kids? I don't get it. Allison, I've never cheated on you. Yeah, right. Well, ex-girlfriend doesn't count. What does that have to do with this? And what ex? Sean, the girl, looked at her husband. I know you're a great actor, but would you stop? Let's assume for a minute that I'm not acting, and I really don't understand what this is about. Why don't you explain it to me? Well, if you prefer it this way, here, look. Allison held out her phone to him. Cian was looking at a sad-looking boy in the picture on the screen of the phone. He looked to be about 2 years old, maybe a little older. Take it. Allison held it out. Look, there are a lot of pictures. Cian didn't mind. He picked up the phone and flipped through the gallery. It looked like Allison had taken the pictures herself. There were dozens of pictures of the boy. Cian had no trouble noticing that the boy looked just like him. This kid is probably a relative of his. Who is it? He finally asked. Whose child is this? Your son, Allison answered him. Don't you recognize him? You've probably only seen him a few times. Allison, look. This kid is probably a relative of mine. But that's not my son. I'm actually seeing him for the first time. Can you please explain to me why you're so sure I'm his father? Why don't you have any doubts about it? The girl looked at Cian carefully. Now there is, she replied. You couldn't have played it all out like that. When was the last time you saw your ex-girlfriend? Which one? We're probably talking about Marty. I saw her the day I told her I had to go away for a while. We had a big fight, broke up immediately. I decided there was nothing left to keep me here, so I left. I never saw her again. If you remember, she wrote to me a few years ago. That was our only contact, so to speak. Did she contact you? She did, Allison admitted. Said she tried to call you, but since you're ignoring her, she's going to tell me. So, Maddie sent you a picture of the boy. That's it. You believe he's my son. I mean, he looks like me, but how many kids look like me? I'm sorry. Allison got up and went to her bag. She pulled out another photo, a much older one, and held it out to her husband. How do you explain this one? Cian took the photo from Allison. He studied it for a long moment, then brought it closer to the phone screen. Allison kept her eyes on her husband's face, trying to read every emotion that was reflected on his face. At first he seemed uncomprehending. Then a look of extreme interest came over his face. Allison thought that at some point he would feel guilty, but no. She saw no hint of guilt. Finally, Cian looked up at his wife. Very similar, he commented. And the photos were taken in the same place. The photo Cian held in his hands and the one on Allison's phone both showed the boys. Even though the difference between the photos was more than 20 years, it was easy to tell that they had been taken in the same place. And Cian even knew the place perfectly well. The photos were taken in his parents' apartment. The boys in the pictures were about a year old, and they looked remarkably similar. Same eyes, same ears, even the shape of their noses were the same. "What do you say now?" Allison asked. "The photo in the phone was sent to me by your ex, and the second photo. Well, I think you know where I got it. It was in our family album. Are you going to keep saying that this boy is not your son?" Cian looked at the girl absent-mindedly. "Yes," he said after a long silence. "I really needed to tell you." "So you're finally ready to confess?" Allison asked. "But why? Why did you keep it from me? If you were better off just telling her, I'd let you go." "God, that's not what I meant," Sean replied. "I should have told you about my parents from the beginning, about my relationship with them. About everything, really. You should have." She nodded her head in agreement. "But what does that have to do with now? What's the connection between the fact that you cheated on me and your relationship with your parents?" "I didn't cheat on you," Cian answered. "This," he held out a photo to his wife, "is not me. That's Edgar." "Edgar," she muttered. "But why do you have his picture?" "Allison. He's my brother. Why can't I have a picture of him? I honestly don't even remember where I got it from. I just grabbed it with some other papers, I guess." "Wait. So Maddie sent you a picture of this boy, said he was my son. You remembered the picture, saw that we looked alike, and kicked me out of the apartment." That sounds stupid," Allison nodded. "But that's pretty much what happened. I mean, come on, Maddie's your ex-girlfriend. The kid looks just like you at that age. The way he basically looks like you. Your eyes, your smile. And I didn't know you had a brother. So, Maddie and your brother? I have no idea, but you've been to Maddie's, right? Talk to her, Cian asked. No, I didn't see her, Allison replied. But the pictures of the boy in your phone, I thought you took them. I did, Allison confirmed. I've seen the boy more than once, but I haven't seen Maddie. Now I don't get it at all, Cian replied. Maddie texted me first. She sent me pictures. Then we called just before you returned from your business trip. She told me that you'd been visiting all this time. And she gave me so many details, so many little details, that I believed her. Allison, but I was on a business trip this time too, so why wasn't I at her place? That was the hardest part of the story, Allison sighed. Anyway, the first thing she texted me was that she was looking for you. She was persistent, sending several messages a day. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore and asked her what she wanted from you. Maddie replied that you'd been missing for months, not returning her calls, and that she didn't care about you, but needed money for the kids. Said she couldn't handle two. Wait, what, two? Just like that. Two. Maddie has 2 kids. She left the youngest one in an orphanage. His name is Gary. Maddie said she couldn't raise him. She didn't have the capacity. The older one is easier, and she'll keep him for now. But if you don't show up, she'll put the older one in an orphanage. Cian was silent for a long time. It's getting worse by the hour, he muttered finally. What a story. Maddie's a freak. And what, she actually left the boy in an orphanage? She did, Allison nodded. I've been to see him a few times, and this morning I had a meeting with the director of the orphanage. I wanted to find out how I could pick up the boy. Allison Cian stretched out. Are you out of your mind? I thought he was your son, Allison replied simply. God, you've made a mess of things. You almost drove me crazy. Are you mad? The girl asked. Honestly, I am, Cian sighed. I know it's a complicated story. And Maddie is not stupid. She knows how to navigate the situation and make the most of it. And I'm sure my parents had a lot of help, but you should have talked to me first. And you certainly shouldn't have kicked me out of the apartment. I was afraid that if I saw you, I'd forget why I was mad and forgive you. And I didn't want to forgive you because I thought you cheated on me and abandoned your kids. What are we going to do now? The girl asked timidly. But Cian didn't seem to hear her. Wait, you said there are 2 children. How old is the oldest child? 6, Allison answered. God, she looked at her husband in shock. So he could be. Cian shook his head. No, he muttered. She would have told me. She would have told me. Cian, but you were still living here then. Does that mean that Maddie was having an affair with your brother before you left? I don't know. I don't know anything anymore. But you've seen their relationship, Allison said. Did they have any contact at all? Were they friends? I didn't think so. I thought they couldn't stand each other at all. I don't get it. Maybe they're not Edgar's kids. Or... I need to talk to Maddie. Allison shook her head. I called her several times. She's not picking up. Well, she was trying to reach me, Cian said. I'm supposed to get an answer. Can I have her number? Sure, Allison handed her husband her cell phone with Maddie's number written in it. Cian dialed the numbers and pressed the call. He waited for quite a while, but no one picked up. Do you have pictures of the older child? He turned back to his wife. Did she send them to you? Yes, Allison replied. But only 2. She handed the phone back to Cian. Cian stared at the pictures for a long time. It's hard to tell. He finally handed the phone back to her. Let's go. Where to? She was surprised. To my parents. Since Maddie's not answering, we'll have to ask them. Okay, she nodded, following Cian. Are you sure I won't get in your way? Cian turned to his wife. Allison, you and I have a problem right now. You've hurt me a lot, and I don't know how we're going to deal with it yet. But you're still my wife, and I'm not going to divorce you. Unless, of course, you don't want me to. No, she answered hastily. I don't want a divorce. I'm so embarrassed, Cian. I don't even know what drove me to do it. It was probably resentment. I couldn't think about anything else but the fact that you cheated on me. I'm sorry, she asked. We'll talk about this later. All I wanted to say now is that you are my lawfully wedded wife. So please stop acting like a huddled, scared little mouse. We're going to my parents' house. Honestly, after last night's meeting, my only dream is to never see them again. So I really need your support. Allison, you've seen the boy. You've talked to Maddie. In short, you know more than I do. Help me get the parents to tell the truth. Also, Cian looked at his wife carefully. There's something else we need to discuss. If the older boy is still my son, I didn't cheat on you. Everything happened before we met. The girl nodded her head. I understand, she said. And how do you feel about it? Cian asked. Allison shrugged her shoulders. It's hard to say. A baby is always a good thing. That's why I'd be happy for you. That's it? Well, the girl shook her head. It's not nice to find out like this, but it's not your fault. So if Maddie's eldest son is for me, you'll be fine. Yes, Cian. I promise. And I'd love it if you wanted to hang out with the boy and have him come visit us from time to time. Yeah, not even occasionally if he came to live with us all the time. I'd be fine with that too. But if it's not your kid, it'll be a lot easier on all of us, Cian finished Allison's thought. I'm sorry, but yeah, don't apologize. I get it. It's gonna be really hard with Maddie. She's already blackmailing me with a baby, and I'm sure she'll continue to do so. Let's not get ahead of ourselves yet. It was important for me to realize that you wouldn't run away from me again if I found out I had a son. Fiona opened the door this time. You've been coming around a lot, she greeted her son. Come to blame us for all your problems again. She only just noticed Allison. Oh, and this time there's more than one. This is Allison, my wife. Cian introduced her. We just have a few questions for you. The sooner you tell us the truth, the sooner we can leave. This is the first time we've seen your wife. Your father came out into the hallway. You still haven't given up on those conspiracy theories? I already have, Cian replied. We're going to talk about something else now. Where's Maddie? Maddie? Mom interrupted. What do you need her for? I could tell the woman was worried. I want to talk to her. She called Allison, wanting to talk to me, and I'm ready. That little shit, Alex resented her. I told her to stay away from you. So you knew she wanted to contact me. But why? And what's this story with the kids? Whose kids are they anyway? They're our grandchildren and your nephews. Edgar's kids. He went to prison and naturally Maddie was running out of money. She wanted us to come to you for help. We told her not to contact you. We know full well that you don't want anything to do with us. And we can handle the grandchildren on our own. But I guess she didn't listen to us. Where is she now? She's gone to her mom's in the country. There's no communication there. She should be back tomorrow. That's it. That's the first time Allison's ever spoken. You say that so calmly. She's gone to the country. She'll be back tomorrow. What about your little grandson? Gary's in an orphanage now. He's crying, calling for his mommy. Sad and bored. Alex smirked. And you and my son fit together. He's just as mumbly. What's going to happen to him, Gary? Maddie didn't give up the baby. She left him there for a while. We visit him, he'll be fine. Besides, a man has to be used to hardship from a young age, to grow up to be a real man. But this is your favorite Edgar's son, your grandson, Cian reminded him. He noticed how pale his mother had turned. Apparently, she was worried about the child, but she couldn't go against her husband and her. And by the way, who is Maddie to his mother? Are Edgar and Maddie married? Cian asked. Do the children carry your last name? No, Fiona replied. Edgar's in trouble with the law, and he's always down on his luck. And he didn't want to ruin things for the kids and Maddie. He didn't want his reputation to affect them. Of course he did, the son muttered. He didn't want the responsibility. Okay, so Maddie would be here tomorrow. Why did she leave the youngest child at the orphanage and not the oldest? It's obvious that you don't have children, the mother replied. A small child requires more attention, and she has to work. I don't see her working, Cian said. Well, I hope I get a chance to talk to her tomorrow. I only have a few more questions for you. What's the older boy's name? Jack, Alex answered. Here's a question about Jack. Are you sure this is Edgar's child? Cian looked at his mother. She was worse than his father at hiding her feelings. And as soon as he asked that question, he realized that she doubted it too. She doesn't know the answer. Edgar never had any doubt that Jack was his son. He asked us to have no doubts. And we... Okay, Cian interrupted his mother. You did what you always do. You honored your favorite son's request. Okay, he waved his hand. I hope my cell phone hasn't been deleted. Tell Maddie I'm looking for her. I really want to talk to her. Wait, Cian's father called out to him. Are you going to find out if Jack is your son or not? Yes, Cian confirmed. I'm going to. Why? If it turns out that he is yours, Alex replied, then I'll talk to Maddie about giving the boy to you. Edgar's getting out of prison soon. He needs a family and other people's kids. Cian heard Allison gasp quietly next to him. The girl reached out and squeezed his palm. Yes, Dad, I understand, Cian replied without taking his eyes off the older man's face. Edgar has to have the perfect life, and you're going to try your best to create it, even though he will once again completely fail to appreciate it. The next day, Maddie called and then came to the hotel to see Cian herself. "Your wife is crazy," she informed him, taking a seat in the chair across from Cian. "When I called her, I didn't expect it to have this effect. I was just trying to piss you two off, and I was hoping you'd give me some money." And Maddie smirked. "You two aren't getting a divorce, are you?" "None of your business." "We'll deal with Allison on our own," Cian replied. "But unlike you, she's a kind and sympathetic girl. She cares about your kids more than you do." "I don't care," Maddie replied. "Will you give me the money? Jack, is he Edgar's son or mine?" Cian didn't beat around the bush. Maddie grinned and shrugged. "I have no idea," she replied. "I've never done an appraisal. I just convinced Edgar that it was his baby. He was so proud to beat you once again that he forgot to even ask for confirmation." "When did your relationship with Edgar begin?" "I was still here, wasn't I?" "Of course," Maddie grinned. "We liked going out behind your back. It was fun. Back then I thought I loved him a lot more than I loved you. He made me feel good. I found out I was pregnant just before you left. I was just starting to think about which one of you to tell first. And then you and your announcement that you were leaving. I was so excited. I thought all my problems were solved." "Why?" Cian was surprised. "It wasn't, was it? Your brother is hard to live with. If I had stayed with you, the girl would have stopped talking. What to say now? It turned out the way it did. I want us to run a DNA test on Jack. We need to put this thing behind us once and for all. And if I don't agree," Maddie smirked, "it's my baby and I may not consent." "You can," the man agreed. "Except no test, no money. And if Jack's my son, I'll help you. Or are you saying no because you did the DNA and you know for sure it's not my kid?" "Okay. Let's do the stupid test," Maddie agreed after some hesitation. "But maybe you could throw in some money. I can't even make it. We have nothing to eat." Cian looked at the girl with contempt. "Have you tried to work?" he asked. "Do not interfere in my life with stupid advice. I'll figure out whether I should work or not." "Okay." Cian handed Maddie some bills. "I'll call you tonight. I'll tell you where we're meeting tomorrow. And you know there's no second chances. If you don't show up, then I think Jack is my brother's son." Maddie stared at the money in her hands for a few minutes, thinking. "All right," she said at last. "You don't have to spend it. Here." She handed him a piece of paper. "I made it 6 years ago. Jack is Edgar's son." Cian scrutinized the contents of the document. "Thank you." He handed the document back to Maddie. "Then we have nothing more to talk about. I hope we won't see each other again." "Wait," Maddie exclaimed as Cian rose from the table. "And you don't care that your nephew is in an orphanage?" "I do," Cian admitted. "But I know exactly what will happen if I interfere. You'll use the boy to get money out of me. That won't make me happy, or most importantly, him." So he spread his hands. "You can take it from here. Without me. Oh, and by the way, if any of you try to contact my wife again, I'll go to the police. I'll tell them you're threatening me. I hope that's clear." "I am," Maddie snorted. "You've changed, and not for the better. Apparently your wife is all softness and humanity now, and you've become..." Maddie was silent for a moment. "Just like us," she finally finished. "Maybe," Cian didn't disagree. "But I still won't help you." Cian returned to the room where a worried Allison was waiting for him. "Did you talk?" she asked. "We did," Cian nodded. "We're leaving tomorrow morning." "What about the forensics?" Allison asked. Maddie had already done the forensics back when Jack was born. "He's Edgar's son. I've seen the papers." "She just showed them to you." The wife was surprised. "I gave her the money," Cian admitted. "I made it clear that it was the only money she'd ever get from me. She must have realized I was serious, and she showed me the papers." "I see," the girl stretched out. It seemed to Sean that his wife was even upset that Jack was not his son. So we're free to go home tomorrow. What about Gary? Allison asked, confused. Allison. Let's talk, Sean suggested. What's going on? You, of course, have always been a girl sympathetic and soft. But this whole situation isn't really like you. What's the matter? Simple, Allison shrugged. He's a good boy. I feel sorry for him, and I feel like they don't need him at all. Sean covered his eyes. He just refused to believe what was happening. Allison, I wasn't asking about this particular kid. I was asking about the whole situation. Okay, well, let's talk about Gary first. You've already checked into his adoption. What did they tell you? That Maddie hadn't given him up and therefore no one but Maddie could take him. Sean spread his hands. Then what was the conversation about? He asked. They don't want him, Allison replied. Allison, I feel sorry for my nephew too, and I wish I could help him. But let's just say we're trying to take him away. What do you think Maddie would do? I get it. I get that it's almost impossible. She'll start blackmailing us. She'll start pulling money out of us. And then she probably won't give up the baby. Because once we have Jack, she and your brother will have no further leverage over you. Exactly, Sean nodded. You know that. I do. I just feel sorry for the boy. I just feel sorry for the boy. What's that? The man asked. No, nothing. Allison dismissed it. You said we could go home tomorrow, but where are we going to go? I've rented out our apartment. She kept her head down. Allison, so you're not going to tell me what's going on with you? Girl shrugged. Not yet. I don't understand everything. Give me a few more days and then we'll talk, okay? Well, okay, Sean answered. And about the apartment, I talked to the chief yesterday. He is not happy that I am long gone. He says I have to go on a business trip again. Allison looked at her husband, almost frightened. Are you going away? She asked hastily. As soon as we get back to the city. The bosses are asking, or rather demanding, Sean answered. So I was wondering, maybe I should quit. Emma. Allison looked at her husband in surprise. Quit? I thought you loved your job. I used to, but now, with this boss coming in, I'm liking it less and less. So I thought, the apartment's rented. I won't have a job. You can't stand your job either. There's nothing to keep us in this town. Why don't we go somewhere else and make a fresh start? Allison looked at her husband shyly. With me? Allison, we've been over this. Thank you for not being disappointed in me and for giving me a second chance. I know I'm a mess. I don't know what's going on, but right now it seems to me like you had some other reason to do this besides the ones you gave me. I hope one day you'll tell me everything. In the meantime, let's forget about this and think about where we can move to. What should we do? A big city or a smaller town? Allison and Sean returned home. For now, they checked into the apartment where Sean lived. They needed a few more days to quit their jobs, finalize things, and pack. They still hadn't decided where they were going to go. Sean offered Allison to choose a city to look for a rented apartment, but the girl only replied that there was still time. About a week later, Sean came home and found his wife looking at houses in the remote village. You want to move there? He wondered. But where would we work? Allison shook her head. I'd thought about moving, she admitted. But not for the two of us. I know you dream more of the big city, and... Do you want to live in the country? Sean asked. No, Allison shook her head. Not that I really want to. It's just, I don't think it's a bad house. And it's cheap to rent. And it's cheap to rent. And life is cheaper in the country. I could live there. And there's a job there looking for a kindergarten teacher. So good. I see that you have decided everything again. And most importantly, again, everything without me. No, she shook her head. Those are just options. I'm not running away or doing anything else until I talk to you. Simple, the girl waved her hands. Let's look at how we used to live. Come on, Sean agreed. I thought we were happy. Are you sure? Allison asked. No, of course, when we first met in the first few years we were married, we were very happy. And the last year? The last year what? Sean asked. Yeah, maybe it hasn't been the best. But was there something missing? I love you so much, Allison. And I love you. But let's be honest. You haven't been on so many business trips before. And you've been sent on so many trips with your consent. All this year, I've been waiting for you. You'd come home for a week and then disappear again for a month. Now you want to quit, but back then you were avoiding me. Allison, What? Allison asked. Am I wrong? Ever since we went to the clinic to get checked out and it turned out that I was the reason? Allison, that's not why I've been avoiding you. Well, that's exactly why. But I don't blame you for anything. I mean, you can't have a baby yet, that's fine. It seems to me that you're driving yourself crazy, racking yourself with guilt and fear. I'm good too, Sean nodded his head. I'm not gonna make excuses. You were so upset the whole time, and I figured the less you saw of me, the easier it would be for us. And what can I say? The atmosphere in our house wasn't easy. And so you go away. And then you come. You're glad to see me. I'm glad. That's why I reacted so keenly to the messages from Mahdi. Naturally, I should have talked to you. But you know, you have kids out there, and more than one. Allison waved her hands. And I can't give you a baby. So she's better than me. Allison, I don't have kids with Mahdi, Sean reminded her. I know, I really didn't think so at the time. And then when you thought Jack was your son, I saw the way your eyes lit up. And I saw how upset you were when you realized he wasn't yours. Sean, we love each other, but we're not happy together. So I thought, since you're starting over, maybe you should do it alone. You start a new life wherever you want, and I'll go somewhere else. Maybe we'll be happy separately. Sean looked at his wife carefully. What do you want? He asked. Why do you always think about others? Why do you always put your own desires first? It matters what I want, Maddie, the kids. What do you really want? No buts, Sean replied. That's enough. We'll do whatever you want. You want to get divorced? We'll get divorced. If you want to stay together, then. He smiled. We'll be together. He kissed his wife on the nose. I love you, and I want you to learn to appreciate yourself. Seeing Allison sat down next to her husband. I've been thinking. I don't want a divorce, but I want your opinion on this too. Do you really want to live with me? If I can't have a baby, so what? The man shrugged. If you can't, then we'll take one from the orphanage. It's just that after you refused to adopt your nephew, I thought, Allison, I feel sorry for the boy too, Sean replied. Even though I've never even met him, I'm truly sure that neither you nor me, nor most importantly, the child will do any good. Allison nodded her head in agreement. Thank you for giving me a second chance. Allison, why is it that way? Why are you always apologizing and adjusting? Allison shrugged and replied, I don't know, habit, I guess. It's been that way since I was a kid. Don't forget that I grew up with a brother too. I was in a similar situation to yours. No, my parents are certainly not your parents. They didn't emphasize my brother that much. But he's a boy, I'm a girl. He got more attention. They were more worried about him. I was quiet, studious, and he fell into bad company early on. And at school, my parents made me look after him, just to keep an eye on him. I was kind of caught between two fires, and always guilty. Either he noticed me and scolded me, or I failed to follow him, and my parents scolded me. It was useless to justify myself. I got used to the easiest way to apologize right away. For the last year, I didn't even try to follow him. I just went to my parents and listened to their reproaches. But thank God things got better after that. They're so close now. And my brother is doing well, you know, the girl smiled. He is. By the way, you never told me that either, Sean remarked. Allison nodded. You're right about that, she replied. I thought the past was important, that it would help me get to know you better. And now I realize that's just silly. What matters is who you are now, not what you were in the past. Sean, you said to think about what I want. I did. And it's not just about you and me. Oh, that's new. I'd love to hear it. I don't want to move to another city. And I've rented our apartment for a while. Just for a month. Also, I know you and I have plenty of money set aside. Let's sell this apartment and get a bigger one. That's not a bad suggestion, Cian agreed. We really need the apartment, but I already quit my job. You didn't like it, Allison reminded me. And I quit. Let's find another job, one that we like. I like this town. We already know everyone here. And I found a good doctor. Well, that's a good reason, Sean agreed. Then we stay here and start looking for a new job. We can put the apartment up for sale in advance, too. Do you think the tenants will let us take pictures? The realtor took pictures before the lease. Let's call him. I don't like your realtor. He's slippery. Let me guess. The whole reason he's a man, Allison asked with a laugh. That too. Allison, Sean suddenly became very serious. Promise me something. If you ever feel unhappy around me again, just tell me right away. Let's not bring it to a situation like this again. I agree, Allison nodded. So I'm calling the realtor. Yes, but we'll meet him together. Allison could only marvel at how life had changed since that day. It was like the universe was letting them know they'd done the right thing. Both Allison and Cian quickly found jobs. They sold the apartment almost immediately. Immediately, they found and bought a new apartment. It required renovation, but it even pleased the couple. Both of them were happy to plunge into the worries about the arrangement of their home. And also, they were lucky, and now they worked literally in a stop from each other. So to work and from work, they traveled together. Relationships also qualitatively changed for the better. Of course, Allison would occasionally forget and start apologizing to Cian for everything, but her husband quickly stopped her. Saturday morning, Cian woke up alone. He went into the kitchen and found Allison finishing her breakfast. "Why are you up so early?" he asked. "You didn't wake me up?" Allison kissed her husband on the nose. "I wanted you to sleep a little longer. I'm going to the clinic, remember?" "I'm coming with you," he answered immediately. Allison giggled and rolled her eyes. "Cian," she bowed her head. "The couch will be here in 2 hours. Did you forget?" "I forgot," he replied. "But don't get upset," the girl interrupted him. "I'm going for a routine appointment. The doctor will just tell me how my condition is, whether something has improved since I was treated or not. That's quite an appointment. Call me as soon as you get out of the doctor's office. And don't get upset if the results aren't good." Allison nodded. "I promise," she replied. Cian stayed behind to wait for the couch, and Allison left for the clinic. About 2 hours later, she called him and told him in a cheerful voice that the tests were excellent. "The couch was here," Cian reported back. "Are you going home?" "Yes," Allison replied. "I'm just going to stop at the candy store for some brownies. And then I'll be right home." "I'm waiting," her husband replied. Allison smiled happily, put the phone in her bag, and went down the steps of the clinic. It was warm outside, and the girl took a deep breath with pleasure. She thought about the fact that they still needed to find a dresser and curtains for the bedroom. But today they could give themselves a day of rest. They already had a lot to do. Their apartment finally felt like a cozy family nest. And they could celebrate. The doctor said she was fine now, and nothing should interfere with the pregnancy. On Monday, Allison looked outside reluctantly. "We got to work early," she declared to Cian. "The weather's lovely. It's been such a great weekend. I don't feel like going to work." "Let's have lunch together," her husband suggested. "It would make the time go by faster." Allison nodded her head. "I agree." But in the morning, Cian realized that his plans for lunch with his wife were unlikely to come true. Everything seemed out of control today. The plans changed lightning fast. He called Allison. warned her about canceling the lunch together. But by noon, everything had calmed down, as if Providence had finally taken mercy on Cian and his colleagues. At lunchtime, he left the office and walked toward the cafe where he and Allison usually met. He decided to dial his spouse's phone number. If she was free, they would still have time to meet. Cian, suddenly he heard a voice behind him. Cian turned around and saw a pretty girl rushing towards him. You probably don't remember me. She started. No, Cian answered. I remember you perfectly. You're Shanna. You and I were almost in a car accident once. Yes, that's me, Shanna replied. I'm so glad I ran into you. I was so sorry I didn't have your phone number. I really need to talk to you. This won't take long. Why don't we grab a coffee or... Mum? Cian was curious to see how things were going with the girl himself. Allison's not expecting him, so why not say yes? All right, let's go, he replied. Great. My favorite cafe is right next door. Do you work anywhere near here? Shanna wondered. I've never seen you before. Is that surprising? Actually, it's not surprising at all, replied Cian. I've only been working here for a short time. Just a few weeks. How are you doing? I'm good. Of course, I've had a difficult time, Shanna began. My divorce was really hard on me. Plus my ex-husband, the girl shuddered. To be honest, I never realized he was so petty. The divorce was really hard. We shared everything down to the spoons. But now, thankfully, it's over. The first time after the divorce, I was just glad it was over. And now it's good. Now I've learned to enjoy my freedom. That no one cheats on me, no one hurts me. All in all, it's all good. I'm very happy for you. Cian smiled. Allison entered the cafe with two colleagues. Have you really never been here before? Anna asked her. This place has the best food in town? No, Allison replied. It's my first time here. Wow, Victoria suddenly grabbed Allison's hand. That's your husband? The girl followed her co-worker's hand. Yes, she nodded with a slight smile. That's Cian. And he's with a girl, Anna informed the obvious. I see, Allison nodded. Let's sit somewhere far away so he won't be distracted. What do you mean, distract him? Victoria didn't understand. It's probably a mistress. Or he's having a business lunch and we're interrupting, Allison suggested. Even if it is a business meeting, she's beautiful and smiling at him. Allison just shrugged silently. Come on, Anna called out. I found a great table. We'll see everything and they won't notice us. Allison looked at her colleagues in surprise. What do we need to see? She asked, taking a seat at the very same table. Are you crazy? Victoria exclaimed. Why are you sitting with your back to them? You won't see anything. Girls, maybe we'll come here some other time, Allison asked. Right now, let's have lunch somewhere else. No, Anna said firmly. We can't keep you here, but we're not going anywhere. If you'd rather turn a blind eye, we're going to have to help you. He's cheating on you. He's making a fool out of you. Allison sighed heavily. Okay, she said. We'll stay here. Watch if you have nothing else to do. Only it's all for nothing. I'll come home tonight, ask him, and he'll tell me all about it. And you'll believe it. Simple as that. You better check his cell phone tonight. Try social media, see who he's texting with. I'm not going to do any of those things, Allison replied. Life has taught me to trust the people I love. I also know that Cian loves me. We're great, and he's not cheating on me. So I'm not going to check anything. And you check just for yourself, just to make sure, Anna insisted. Allison realized she wasn't going to change her colleagues' minds. She mumbled. I will. I'll do as you say. Fortunately, the food did turn out to be excellent, and for the time being, the co-workers left Allison alone. They continued to watch her husband, but they didn't say anything to her, and Allison didn't ask. But as soon as the meal was over, the moralizing came back again. They smile at each other. She flirts with him. Allison shrugged. They are pleasant to each other. They have a friendly rapport. That's enough, she asked her friends. We should get back to work. The rest of the day was quite nerve-wracking for Allison. Hannah and Victoria took turns coming up to her and suggesting different ways that she could follow scene. It even came down to a private detective. Allison had been reluctant at first, but for the last 2 hours had only nodded. I'll do whatever you say. Of course you're right. I need to check it out, she kept saying. And her friends, sensing that they were succeeding, pressed her harder and harder. Allison was literally counting the hours until the end of the day. But then the boss showed up and asked her to stay a little longer. She had another urgent assignment to complete. Allison hoped that at least the girls would go home, but they were watching her every move. Finally, Allison couldn't take it anymore. Girls, did someone cheat on you? Mom? No, wondered Anna. Should I have? It seems to me that yes. At least I would have cheated if I were your husbands. You're both looking forward to it. I'm sorry, but Cian and I are different. He's not cheating on me, and I just trust him. I'll come home and I won't even ask him anything. I'll just tell him I saw him at the restaurant tonight. If he wants to, he'll tell me who he was with. And if he doesn't want to, he won't. And that's fine too. I hope there are no more questions. Allison walked into the apartment and immediately smelled the good smell. You late tonight? Cian looked out of the kitchen. Allison replied. The chief asked me to stay late. Yeah, he said. I thought I'd make something quick. I'll give you a hand, Allison replied. Okay, agreed her husband. I'll meet you in kitchen. There's something I want to tell you. Allison appeared in the kitchen a few minutes later and began setting the table. I saw you today, she said, at lunch. My co-workers took me to a new cafe and you were there. Why didn't you come over to say hello? The husband wondered. Allison, he looked at the girl carefully. Are you jealous? Allison smiled slightly and shook her head negatively. I'm sorry, but no, she replied. I just thought you might have a business meeting and didn't want to intrude. Besides my co-workers, she waved her hand vaguely. What? That's a separate and unnecessary conversation. They've been trying to convince me all day that you're cheating on me and that I need to follow you, hire a detective, check your cell phone, and all that kind of nonsense. Need to? Cian asked. Who? Allison didn't understand. The phone is mine, Cian answered. The girl bowed her head thoughtfully. But you can give it to me, she agreed. I like one dress. I'd love to buy it with your card. Cian laughed, then pulled his wife against him. Thank you for trusting me, he replied. And by the way, my interesting story has to do with this girl. And I do not even know whether it's good that you did not approach or on the contrary. It's a pity that you did not do it. Why? Allison wondered. Remember I told you about the girl I almost ran over on the highway? Her husband had cheated on her, and she was very upset. Yeah, Allison said. I remember it well. Is that her? Yeah, we met on the street today. She saw me and she was really happy. She said she wished she'd gotten my number because she really wanted to talk to me. And since I wanted to know how she was doing, I agreed to have coffee with her. How's it going? What about your husband? Are they reconciled or divorced? Allison asked. Divorced. And Shanna said the divorce had been very hard on her, and she'd had a hard time since the divorce. But she said that she was doing fine now, that she liked living on her own. Allison smiled sadly. It was good that she was doing well, of course, but it was still sad. Cian nodded. But that's not what I wanted to tell you, he said. I drove her to the cafe that day, and we talked a little, and I told her about you, about our relationship. Although, Cian smiled. Everything I said at that moment was not quite true. But then I believed in the truth of my words. And one thing I was definitely not wrong about. I love you very much. Allison hugged her husband. I love you too, she said. But why are you... Shanna is a journalist. She has an assignment from the newsroom to write a big story, even a series of articles about couples in love and relationships. And today she asked permission to write about our relationship. About what I was telling her that day at the cafe. Wow, Allison was surprised. The truth, Cian said. That you and I, as it turns out, have a less than perfect relationship. That we kept a lot of things quiet and didn't know how to share problems with each other. That it was too early to write about us. We needed a lot of work on our relationship. Allison smiled. You're right, she said. I couldn't have found better words. But she still insists, she said. She says she'll write about what I told her then, and she'll figure out the rest on her own. Did you say yes? Allison asked. I said it was okay with me, but that I still needed to talk to you. I don't mind, Allison replied. Let her write whatever she wants. I'm sure your words are worth putting on paper. Cian smiled and kissed his wife on the temple. You know, the most valuable thing about today's meeting was your reaction. You have no idea how much your trust means to me. Allison looked at her husband with embarrassment. I didn't do anything wrong, she replied. Our relationship is created by the two of us. Now really by the two of us. And in the fact that I trust you, I deserve as much credit as you do. The girl was silent. Cian? She suddenly asked. And they lived happily ever after, Cian answered with a smile. I'm sure of it.